Hi, everyone. Greetings from SocialCode. We're super excited to be here today, and thanks to our partners at MPS for inviting us to join this really exciting webinar series. We specifically are going to talk to you today about leveraging Facebook and other social platforms to maximize Prime Day sales. Before we jump into everything, I want to take a moment to introduce myself. My name is Sean Walsh. I'm the Vice President of Client Development and Strategy at SocialCode. Just a bit of housekeeping for today's session. First, this recording and the slides will be sent as a follow-up, so don't worry about taking a ton of notes during the session. We'd love for you to listen and engage. Second, please feel free to submit questions via email. My email is Sean, my first name, @socialcodeinc.com. All of those questions will be answered via email after the presentation concludes. Anything that you aren't able to submit or any additional questions or resources, we're going to talk about some internal resources from SocialCode. Please also feel free to reach out directly to me, and I'll be happy to follow up or connect with the relevant folks internally that can help with your request. Now, as for the agenda today, we're going to talk just a little bit about us and give you some background as to why we think we're credentialized to talk about leveraging social platforms leading into and during Prime Day. Then we're going to focus most of our time on unpacking our approach to Prime Day, specifically the variables that drive the best campaign performance and give you the best chance to use these channels to drive customer acquisition and drive deals on Prime Day. Those being audience, platforms where we want to prioritize media, creative and best practices from our internal code creative team, and then the executional and measurement details that we would recommend employing leading into the Prime Day activation. And finally, we'll summarize everything with the key points that you can't forget heading into your Prime Day activation. So quick about us. SocialCode, if you have not heard of us, combines audience data, media expertise, and creative solutions to drive better performance and transformative results for our clients' businesses. That is our high-level overarching mission statement. But how that kind of manifests into how we help brands today, it really falls into 4 key buckets. The first is paid media. We maximize performance across digital channels to drive business for our partners, and we'll talk about those channels in just a moment. The second is data, and that's really audience and transactional data that allows us to power the best audiences possible. And we really look at that as in service of our paid media business, leveraging customers' audience and transaction data to build the best audiences possible. Then on the creative side, we sit on a wealth of data both on the audience and platform and creative ad unit front. We've actually built an in-house code creative team that can take insights from the data we sit on and deliver data-driven creative for all of our campaigns. And finally, measurement. None of this matters if we can't measure every single dollar we're spending. So we'll talk a little bit today about how we think about measurement in the context of Prime Day. A bit more on our history. This timeline on the left just showcases kind of how and where SocialCode got our start. We were the first ads API partner on Facebook in 2009, and since then have been inaugural ad API partners with Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, and Snapchat. We also expanded in 2017 to be a Google Premier partner, as well as in 2018 accelerated our Amazon experience or our Amazon expertise with the acquisition of MPS, which is something we're immensely excited about, and again, the reason we're here talking to you all today. Since 2009, our media business has scaled exponentially to the tune of 100 billion impressions served in 2018. That media scale has allowed us to drive really granular testing on the audience and creative fronts, which has allowed us to gain the insights that we're going to talk to you about today, specifically in relation to tentpole media activation events and the experience we have there. As I mentioned earlier, we work closely with audience data and transaction data from our partners to power the best audiences across social and digital campaigns. To do this, we've built AIP, an internal data management platform that allows us to ingest first-party data from our partners, to tie that together with relevant third-party data sources, and then to onboard that data, those audiences, directly into platforms where we're going to activate media and drive campaign success. AIP is fundamental to the future of SocialCode and MPS, allowing us to really manage cross-platform audiences to the best of our abilities. I mentioned Code Creative earlier. Code Creative is our in-house creative team that provides everything from net new content development to rapid transcreation of assets to drive performance for our digital marketing campaigns. We work with brands big and small to drive best practice creative built on top of the insights from our 100 billion impressions served across platforms. And finally, one of the reason we're here today is our partnership with MPS, which we're extremely excited about. We had been running some ads on Amazon and realized that we really needed an end-to-end expertise that we weren't really capable of building out internally, which led us to finding MPS and acquiring MPS and bringing them into the SocialCode family. And we have been so excited about the results that we've seen from working directly with MPS on partners, big and small. And again, we're super excited that they invited us to be here today to talk about our experiences on leading social campaigns for Prime Day. From a brand partner perspective, we really think of our partners in two main buckets. First, on the left is our large kind of Fortune 1, Fortune 500 partners. This is really where we got our start and really where we continue to do a ton of our business today, working with big brands solving big problems. On the right, we think of these brands as more digital upstarts, using digital media and e-commerce to drive the growth of their brands. And we think of ourselves as being able to kind of bridge the gap between these large Fortune 1 companies that want to get more nimble and more active on digital, as well as these kind of digital upstarts that need to grow and scale and want to provide and drive the rigor that we have a lot of experience working with these larger partners. The experience working with partners across the board, specifically within tentpole events, is really what we think allows us to have an authoritative point of view on how to activate for Prime Day. These are three really quick examples where we think relevant experience on Black Friday or Super Bowl can be applied to what we're talking about here today. The first on the left, last year alone, we drove an 11x return on ad spend for Shark Ninja across all digital properties for Black Friday, which was a record high for that brand. We have 5 years experience working with the Anheuser-Busch portfolio, brands like Bud Light and Budweiser, running their Super Bowl campaigns, which are really high touch activations with both awareness driving portions prior to the Super Bowl, which we'll talk about in the context of Prime Day today, as well as really, really granular tactical in the weeds war rooms on the day of Super Bowl, right? Again, which will apply to how we think about activating social for Prime Day. And then finally, Walmart's another partner we've worked with for over 5 years, running all digital customer acquisition. We actually achieved a 22% year-over-year increase in sales for Walmart this past Black Friday. Again, very applicable and learnings we can apply to our Prime Day strategy that we'll talk through today. So we'll shift gears and talk specifically around how we think about leveraging paid social to boost or amplify the work you're putting in on Prime Day on top of the work you're probably doing with MPS already. So what we know about our approach to Prime Day and really what we know about our approach to tentpole events, drawing off of expertise from the likes of Shark Ninja, Walmart, Anheuser-Busch, and others. First, the success of a tentpole event starts well before the day. Planning is super important, and our hope today is that you understand audience, platform, and creative planning inputs that can provide you the most effective campaign for your Prime Day activation. Second, we do want to plan ahead, but there's also a need to stay fluid, and there's some tactics we can employ in our planning that allow us to let data influence our decisioning on the audience, creative, and platform front. And finally, we want to understand media KPIs that will dictate that fluidity, right? Will dictate the optimization strategy we put into play, and also the measurement potential. On the measurement front specifically, we all know Amazon is a walled garden, as are the likes of Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest, et cetera. So we do not have a silver bullet for measurement today, but we will talk to you about how we can think about measuring the impact of potential social ad dollars on your all-in Prime Day success. And this is probably something that most folks on the call are familiar with, but we did want to underpin, right, that the Prime Day customer is extremely active on social. So across the board, whether it's millennials who are most likely to have a Prime Day account leading into Prime Day, right, to be kind of always on Prime users, we see massive reach, whether it's 60 million on Facebook and Instagram, more than that on the Google properties, over 20 million on Twitter, 32 on Snapchat. We'll talk about audience alignment with specific platforms in a bit. Males 18 to 24, they're actually most likely to create a Prime account specifically for Prime Day. Massive reach against that segment as well. And then we see that 54% of Gen X online shoppers are Amazon Prime members, which that's a 2016 stat. We anticipate that number is significantly higher today. That's the biggest audience segment that we have available to reach across the social platforms as well. So this is just to say your audience is there. These platforms offer a real opportunity to drive traffic and drive incremental sales. And we're really excited to talk you through how we think about activating them on Prime Day. So at the end of today, you will understand 4 things. On the audience front, what targeting options are available and how to prioritize them. You will understand how to prioritize channels for driving awareness leading to Prime Day and conversion on Prime Day. From a content perspective, we will tap our code creative team to bring to life some real life best practices for leveraging content both for prospecting and for conversion campaigns across social. And finally, what measurement options are available to me and how should I think about measuring success of social activations driving to Amazon on Prime Day? First and most important, we're going to dive into audience. This is the most important factor for driving success on Prime Day and really any activation on social. Why do we think that? Well, we looked at all of our e-commerce campaigns from 2018 across all platforms we run and wanted to understand the variance between the best and worst performer in a given campaign category. So in this instance, we looked at audience, content, tactics, which are really bidding strategies, and placements. So think about Facebook feed versus Instagram stories versus right-hand rail. Within that analysis, we found that audience drove an 18x difference between the best and worst performing campaign variable, meaning brands are hitting home runs with audiences, but they're also striking out quite a bit. So it's extremely important that you nail your audience strategy before you think about anything else. To that point, we like to showcase our audience prioritization kind of continuum here to brands that we work with, and we wanted to showcase it to you today. So you'll see here from left to right, we rank order our audience priority, our audience input priority for building out campaigns really across social. And there are some platform implications that I can call out here, but these tactics really apply to most social platforms. First and foremost, by far the most important, if you have access to it, is really leveraging your first-party audience data and lookalikes off of that audience data. So that can be everything from current buyers that you have access to and ideally segmented kind of even further down to product categories or specific products themselves, lapsed buyers, ideally from bringing them back into the brand perspective, and then lookalike audiences off of those buyers. All of the social platforms allow us to leverage kind of modeling capabilities within the platform to say, here's a small group of users that mean a lot to my brand. How do I find a large group of users within this platform that looks most like this smaller group of buyers, for instance? So lookalikes and first-party data are extremely important. They're good for any brand with first-party data on their customers, and they drive the highest impact on campaign performance. They're really the bedrock of any awareness or conversion campaign that we drive across Facebook, across Instagram. On Pinterest, you can use act-alike targeting. Similar targeting applies across the board, but this is a really, really important variable to own going into your social campaign activations for Prime Day. Second, we would think about we bucket this as digital action signals, right? And this is kind of a catch-all for multiple different targeting inputs. Whether we're thinking about search terms or search keyword terms across Google or Pinterest, website visitors, right? You can place pixels from the social channels on your own websites if you have them and actually collect users that are navigating to your site. That's essentially another first-party data input that only your brand would have access to that unique grouping of users, and that's a really impactful targeting segment to leverage, both from a retargeting and lookalike perspective. And then finally, running videos on social platforms not only allows you to drive awareness and drive impact against your brand, it also allows you to collect video viewers who are watching your videos and retarget them and push them further down the funnel. So as we think about activating before Prime Day and then on Prime Day, running video before the fact to collect video viewers and retargeting those users who we know have seen a video on our Prime Day offer is going to be a really effective strategy. So this is good for anyone with an owned and operated website, branded video assets, or running media on search platforms like a Pinterest, for instance. And we see really, really high impact on performance from this targeting type. Moving up a bit, we think of platform native targeting as a crucial variable in our targeting mix. We do not want to leverage this alone. We actually want to think about this as layering on top of something like a first-party lookalike or a digital action signal lookalike. But platform native data, you can think of this as anything a user voluntarily offers up to the platform. So this would be age, gender, geo, right? Any type of interest targeting, anything that they're interacting with on the platform that gives us a signal that they might be relevant for our brand. This is a really valuable source of scale. It's a really valuable source our targeting source to drive media efficiency. And we recommend looking into interest targeting, demographic targeting that aligns with your brand, but would always recommend pairing it with more kind of qualified targeting, like like the two sections that we've talked about previously. And then finally, last but not least, in this instance, again, for activating for Prime Day, we have third-party data targeting here listed as well. We make third-party data targeting available to all of our customers through our audience intelligence platform, and it's a really, really valuable way to use offline behaviors to target relevant users. The reason we have it ranked last here is mostly because it's going to be a niche alignment depending on your brand, and also because we rarely recommend leveraging third-party data targeting on Facebook or other relevant social platforms for direct response campaigns, mostly because there's an added cost to leveraging this data that we have to pass through to these data providers that we would actually recommend you putting back into working media and looking to prioritize things like first-party data or digital action signals. That said, for specific verticals where occupation targeting or specific shopper behavior targeting is key to making sure that you drive in-demo or relevant reach within an audience, we absolutely can and would recommend looking into third-party data targeting as well. So we did want to just highlight one quick case study that was specific to a retail partner of ours that leveraged AIP over Black Friday and Cyber Monday last year and drove a 2x increase against their return on ad spend goal, so nearly a 6x overall return, a 60% increase in revenue for this time period compared to 2017, and drove almost $500,000 in additional revenue in just those 3 key days. An audience intelligence platform allowed this retailer to really accelerate what they were doing across the social platforms by tapping into their first-party data and really leaning into that first bucket I talked about, first-party data and lookalikes. We were able to actually bring in relevant third-party signals to enrich their first-party data seed and drive even more quality lookalike seeds than what the brand had been using previously. So that paired with SocialCode's best-in-class campaign activation and media strategy really achieved success. So really this just underpins how important it is to use your first-party data on these social platforms, assuming you have it. And for anyone out there that's curious of whether or not they your audience strategy is up to par, or some of these things sound a bit new, or you would just like kind of a fresh set of eyes on your campaigns, just a call out that SocialCode offers free audience evaluations that look at how your campaigns are currently set up and kind of gauges whether there's an opportunity to increase your efficiency by using first-party data, by using relevant third-party data, really by using any of the tools I just mentioned. So would highly encourage anyone to check our website out. It's a free report that can really go a long way in making your campaigns work harder for you. So now that we've talked about audience, we wanted to move into platform, right? So we know who we want to target, how are we going to reach them, or really where are we going to reach them, and how should we think about prioritizing the platforms we use. First, we want to ask ourselves 4 questions, I should say, right? What is the reach, or how large of an audience can I reach? Where can I maximize my reach against the audience I care about? How sophisticated are the targeting options? What unique measurement solutions exist? And how advanced are the creative capabilities within the channel? How can I convey my brand message, or in this case, my Prime Day offer? So when we think about prioritizing those channels for tentpole activations, we did some pre-sorting here. I will call out that this wouldn't apply to every single brand. There's obviously going to be brands that are heavier on some of these channels than other, but across the board, this is kind of a generalized rule of thumb that Facebook and Instagram and YouTube offer the maximum reach, the maximum measurement potential, the best performance across the board, especially from driving awareness of offers like what we're talking about for Prime Day. So we would recommend that they be included in almost every campaign. Then we see niche audience opportunities, right? Whether it's Gen Z or millennials on Snapchat, where we see a clear over-index, or potentially a Gen X female segment on Pinterest. If you're serving, if you're a beauty brand, or if you're a home good brand, Pinterest is a must, right, to play on. And then finally, Twitter. We see Twitter play a really, really crucial role, especially from a real-time perspective on Prime Day. Blasting your deals on Twitter will be a really, really effective way to kind of tap into that real-time conversation around deals that folks are getting. Again, rule of thumb here is this is a broad kind of view. We would want to kind of engage with any particular brand to understand who their audience is prior to building out final platform priorities. And this just goes to show you that, we also, we take some rigor in terms of scoring each of the inputs that we mentioned earlier. As you can see, Facebook and Instagram obviously are built on the same stack. Instagram's reach is increasing every single day. and YouTube is not far behind in terms of measurement being the only lagging piece there. And then we see some the differentiation among Twitter, Pinterest, and Snapchat. For data like that, but really a much deeper dive in terms of how we view the platforms, what the latest trends are, and where we see them going. Another kind of shameless call out to head to our website and get some really smart thinking that comes out of our marketing team twice a year. It's called our Platform Planning Guide, and it would allow you to understand all of the relevant kind of targeting inputs we just talked about, creative best practices, trends we're seeing based on the deep relationships we have with these platforms. So it's a really valuable resource. And again, this is another free resource available on our website. So we would highly encourage anyone listening to go check that out. Okay, we've talked about audience, we've talked about platform. Now, what are we going to say to them to get them to be excited about our Prime Day offer and ultimately convert? And how are we going to say it? What are the best practices we can leverage or and use in conveying that message? So first and foremost, I would call out here that we think about the Prime Day activation in really two phases, right? The first would be the pre-Prime Day buildup, and whenever and however you can communicate or drive awareness or drive excitement against a given audience that you will have a Prime Day offer. If you already know what your offer is going to be, we would highly recommend you leverage these platforms to drive awareness of those offers, targeting relevant prospects, and leveraging high impact units that allow for retargeting, but also that drive the highest impact and recall within users' feeds when they're scrolling through their feeds. So how that manifests is it's really video across the board. Video is really how users expect to be engaged with across these channels by brands, by their friends, by everyone they follow. So on Facebook and Instagram, that's video link posts, that's leveraging into stories and vertical video. We'll talk about that in just a second. That's GIFs and short motion and video carousels. And the same thing goes down the line. I won't read every single targeting or creative detail here, but the thought on the left side is really driving brand awareness or offer awareness, and then also collecting data to retarget against users as you get closer to Prime Day. As we shift focus to Prime Day, our goal here is very simple. It's to drive targeted traffic to our Prime Day deals at the most efficient rate, right? So we shift focus here a bit away from longer form video. And when I say longer form, I mean like 15 seconds. We shift focus away from that to static assets that showcase our offer, that allow for granular offer testing. So testing things like $2 off versus 20% off. We also shift focus to really shorter, quicker, eye-catching motion. And we'll talk about why in just a moment. We see users click off site at a much higher rate when there is simple motion added to a video or added to a static asset. So down the line, there are specific kind of products that align to each of these goals. And again, this is outlined in much more detail in our platform planning guide as well. So I mentioned we have a code creative team in-house, and we wanted to surface some of the best practices that team uses when thinking about those two different objectives, right? So from a nail the basics perspective, these first four insights are all kind of built for that pre-Prime Day awareness driving kind of campaign strategy, right? So whether it's running Instagram or Facebook video, making sure that you have your brand, and really in this case, your offer up front in the first 3 seconds, super important. We know that users watch videos on Facebook at a pretty fast rate, right? You're scrolling through your feed really fast, but we also know that users are able to retain information very quickly, right? It takes under a second for a user to recognize a brand in their feed. So if you're able to get your message across early in an engaging video, you should be in a good place to then retarget that user later on, as you get closer to and on Prime Day to drive them direct to site. Optimal length and size for Facebook and really Instagram is 4x5, which maximizes the impact on a mobile phone, which is going to be super important. When we think about Pinterest, the big thing to think about here is that details work within our creative. Different from Facebook and Instagram, right? Pinterest actually invites brands to get really detailed. Users go to Pinterest expecting to be engaged with from brands. So in this instance, we would encourage you to educate on what your Prime Day offer is and how that might benefit the user. You have an opportunity to elaborate a bit more there. And then finally, when we think about prospecting, really think about vertical video as a really valuable way to get your initial brand message or your initial Prime Day offer across. So think about leveraging things like Facebook and Instagram stories, right? Like Snapchat, potentially for millennials. And there's some best practices in the platform planning guide as well that call out vertical video. Shifting gears now to actual direct response, right? To what we would be activating and thinking about on Prime Day itself. I called this out earlier, but we know that short motion works. We see a 61% higher click-through rate for cinemagraphs and light motion video content compared to static assets. Users, again, are expecting motion in their feed. It takes that motion to capture the eye and entice the click. Product forward, we want to think about the consumer experience here, right? We want to make sure that we are communicating in feed what that person will see once they navigate to the product page on Amazon. So wherever you can, put the product forward in the offer and communicate that early. And it tends to drive higher conversion when we are driving to owned and operated sites across social. Offers drive performance. This might be the least controversial statement in this deck, right? But it's very, very important to lean on your offer and use that for performance. We see a 20% increase in KPI when we can show an offer in creative. And clearly for Prime Day, there will be some pretty fantastic claims that you can all make for the offers that you're going to be delivering to your customers on Amazon. And finally, this is specific for a millennial audience, but we do think that leveraging Snapchat in particular, lenses or filters really allow you to drive awareness in the moment of Prime Day to really relevant users that potentially fall within that subset of target you want to go after. So we've gone through audience, platform, and content. Now we want to bring it all together to kind of talk through how we think about executing a really, really smart leading to and during Prime Day activation, and then what measurement options are available and how you should think about using them. So know when to start, what to do, and when to ramp, right? As I mentioned earlier, we think of Prime Day activations in two buckets. The first bucket is the 2 weeks leading up, right? The building of awareness, and you can start this a bit earlier. You don't have to start it 2 weeks out. You can start it a week out. If you're going to leverage social to drive incremental traffic to your Amazon Prime Day experience, we would highly recommend you looking at a lead-in phase to really build awareness against audiences and drive some frequency. So from a media strategy perspective, in this instance, we actually don't really want to think about clicks. We want to think about reach and frequency against an audience that is going to be most applicable to our brand. So prioritizing reach and frequency and potentially video views as well, if you're leveraging video, is what we would think about from a media strategy or media execution. From an audience strategy perspective, we want to focus on prospecting, leveraging lookalikes off of first-party data. And if you don't have that, leveraging digital signals, whether it's video viewer retargeting or website visitors if you have an owned and operated site. If you don't have any of those, absolutely lean into platform native things like demo and geo and relevant interest to your brand that allow you to tap into relevant users. And we would recommend a broad audience in this instance. From a channel strategy, we think Facebook and Instagram bought together in placement optimized fashion are a must. YouTube is generally considered to be a best practice from an awareness perspective as well. And then Pinterest and Snapchat, again, from a niche audience alignment opportunity would be other channels we would explore. From a content and messaging best practices perspective, the earlier you can communicate your Prime Day offer, the better. We want to do that through engaging in-feed content like video, as I mentioned. And then from a media KPI perspective, we want to look at CPM and ensure we're getting really effective media costs and getting the most impressions against relevant users as we possibly can. Video views if we're running video, right, and making sure that we are generating retargeting audiences, for our Prime Day activation. And then finally, we want to make sure we do reach enough users that we're going to drive actual clear business impact for the brand. We don't want to be driving impact against 5,000 users. We'd much rather be driving impact against 500,000 users. And there's some media choices you can make to make sure that happens, even with a relatively small budget. Shifting gears to Prime Day, our focus is very clearly to drive qualified traffic to your Prime Day deals. You want to maintain a focus on lookalikes of first-party data and refine segments to more qualified hand raisers like video viewers and site visitors, again, if you're able to retarget. Channel strategy here, maintaining an emphasis on Facebook and Instagram. We see a lot of success doing this. We talked about Twitter being a real-time workhorse. We talked about Snapchat from a lens and filter perspective. Content, messaging best practices, we would want to look at rapid testing of different offer types to drive qualified traffic on Prime Day. We'll talk about this in a second, but this is really kind of where you flex your direct response muscles, where you have multiple versions of the same creative live at the same time and understand which is driving a lower click-through rate versus specific audiences. You want to be making multiple optimizations during the 36 hours of Prime Day to make sure that you really are driving the most impactful campaign and getting the most out of your media. And our KPIs here from a media perspective are things like CTR and CPC to make sure that traffic that's coming to Amazon is coming most efficiently, and the media you're deploying across Facebook and the other social platforms is being deployed most efficiently. So I mentioned earlier that there is no silver bullet to measuring attribution from a platform like a Facebook into an Amazon. That said, there are some simple tactics you can employ to make sure that if you are going to use these other scalable channels like a Facebook and Twitter, for instance, to drive traffic to your Amazon Prime Day experience, that you are using all of the options available to you to understand which inputs are working best in your campaigns. So on the left-hand side here, when we think about platform metrics, really what we're solving for is understanding how efficiently we're able to drive traffic to Amazon, right? This is a relatively simple data input to understand, and really this is where most of our optimizations are going to be based around. These are platform reported metrics that allow us to compare a video on Facebook to a separate video on Facebook, right? Or a video on Facebook to a promoted pin on Pinterest, right? We can quantify that to a CPC, to a click-through rate, and we can start understanding where our media is being spent most effectively from a traffic driving perspective. The right-hand side gets a little trickier, and this is kind of a high-level view of how we would approach gauging the success of social media investment driving to Prime Day. So we would really want to understand what is the effectiveness of the traffic we're driving to our campaigns. And again, we don't have that visibility from an attribution perspective to make a one-to-one kind of tie into performance or conversions. What we would want to look at here is overall revenue, what your session count looks like, your overall clicks, and your conversion rate on Amazon. And what we would want to do is compare that to year-over-year data, assuming you activated on Prime Day last year, as well as month-over-month kind of leading into Prime Day to understand what the potential incremental impact of your social investment had. Again, this is not going to give us anything definitive and is not going to tell us which creatives or audiences work best, but looking at your incremental investment on social and comparing that to last year, assuming you didn't necessarily go as big on social, is one way to think about quantifying the impact of incremental dollars, right? This would also we would also want to look at, did it have any incremental effect on your Amazon.com media performance that you're running with MPS, right? The assumption would be if you're running a bunch of traffic from Facebook, you're going to see increased search volume on Amazon, and potentially we would see a draft effect of our MPS campaigns getting much more efficient there as well. Again, not perfect, but kind of our thought starters for how to think about understanding the impact that outside media can have on Amazon. One additional way that we've worked with some other partners to kind of hack together a solution to understand how Facebook or how traffic from Facebook is impacting Amazon sales is what we call is leveraging affiliate linking to really understand sales impact on Amazon. So obviously Amazon makes it pretty hard to understand non-Amazon media impact on Amazon sales. And most advertisers want to understand, what are these other channels doing to my scale at Amazon success? So we look at affiliate linking, which is, obviously you can go in and, to the affiliate workflow in Amazon and create custom or individual URLs. We would create URLs that correspond to all of the audience and creative combinations we would be running on Facebook. And then we would use those URLs as our destinations for our Facebook video or link page post ads. We would then activate and run that media using, starting by using Facebook media KPIs like CPC and CTR that we talked about earlier to drive our optimizations. But through Amazon's affiliate reporting, we'd actually start to understand which combinations or which links were driving the best performance. And we can then tie those back to our Facebook ads and inform optimizations that allow us to bring a little bit more data from Amazon into our Facebook optimization strategy, which is, in our mind, it's kind of like knocking a small window through the walled gardens versus knocking them down completely. One call out here is that the affiliate tracking only works on a last click basis and doesn't track mobile app conversion. So this is clearly not the full picture. But we would potentially recommend using it on desktop to start understanding the impact Facebook can have on your campaign and extrapolating out some of those insights to your overall campaign activation. So we would, the other caveat here is this is definitely not a simple setup. There's definitely some rolling up of the sleeves that takes to get this off the ground, but it is something that SocialCode has done for other partners, again, to kind of really start understanding what the impact of Facebook on Amazon can look like. So we just talked through a ton across multiple different campaign inputs, and we wanted to kind of summarize everything to, if you remember three things, we hope that you remember Success of an event starts well before the day. We talked about it. Build targeted awareness from, drive prospecting using the audience data signals that we talked about. Design audience and content testing strategies that allow for rapid iteration as needed. And this really applies to Prime Day itself. As I talked about, whether you use the affiliate linking strategy or whether you're looking at just Facebook or any other platforms, media performance metrics, it's really important to build that muscle memory or build that optimization cadence that allows you to shift strategies and shift towards what's working. And then finally, know your measurement goals going into Prime Day. Understand what you're going to spend, how much traffic you anticipate to drive, and what success would look like. If you have any questions on anything in this deck, please feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to clarify or go a bit deeper with you. Outside of that, I encourage you to get in touch. Again, my name is Sean Walsh. My email is sean@socialcodeinc.com. Thank you so much to the MPS team. Thank you all for sticking with us through this and listening. We really are excited to see some engagement and see some questions and look forward to hearing from you.